Imagine you are standing on a mountain peak in northern China. The wind is cutting. The drop on either side of you is hundreds of meters. The terrain is so steep that a goat would struggle to cross it. And running directly over this mountain, over this impossible, brutal, vertical landscape is a wall. Not a small wall. A wall wide enough for 5 soldiers to walk side by side. A wall with watchtowers every few hundred meters, each one tall enough to see the next. A wall that climbs up the mountain you are standing on, descends into the valley below, climbs the next mountain, and then continues in both directions until it disappears into the horizon, and then continues beyond that for 13,000 miles. The Great Wall of China is the largest structure ever built by human hands. It crosses 15 provinces. It passes through deserts, grasslands, mountains, and cliffs. Sections of it are over 2,000 years old, and it was not built by one emperor, or one dynasty, or one generation. It was built and rebuilt, and extended and repaired for 2,000 years by millions of people, many of whom never came home. This is the real story of the Great Wall, why China needed a WAL to understand the Great Wall. You must understand the world north of China. Beyond the mountains and deserts of northern China lay the vast Eurasian steppe, one of the largest grassland regions on Earth, stretching from modern Mongolia all the way to Eastern Europe. On this steppe lived nomadic peoples, the Xiongnu, the Mongols, the Turkic tribes, who were among the most skilled horsemen and warriors in the ancient world. These nomadic peoples had a problem. The steppe could sustain them in good years, but in bad years, drought, harsh winters, disease among their livestock. They needed what the steppe could not provide: grain, silk, iron, all of which existed in abundance in the settled, agricultural civilizations to their south. So they raided. Fast cavalry could strike a Chinese border village, take what they needed, and disappear back into the steppe before any organized military response could reach them. For centuries, the kingdoms of northern China were in a constant state of low-level warfare with steppe peoples they could never quite catch and never quite defeat. The solution, eventually, seemed obvious. Build a wall. Keep them out. If only it had been that simple. Qin Shi Huang, the man who started it, the story of the Great Wall begins with the most consequential ruler in Chinese history, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Unified China for the first time in 221 BC after decades of brutal warfare between rival kingdoms. In 11 years of rule, he standardized weights, measures, currency, and writing across the entire country. He built roads and canals. He created the administrative framework that would govern China for the next 2,000 years, and he ordered the building of a wall. Several of the kingdoms he had conquered had already built their own defensive walls along their northern borders. Qin Shi Huang ordered these existing walls connected and extended, creating a continuous barrier across the entire northern frontier of his new empire. He sent his greatest general, Ming north with 300,000 soldiers. To build it, 300,000 soldiers, plus an unknown number of conscripted workers, criminals, and prisoners. Estimates of the total workforce involved in Qin war construction range from 500,000 to 1 million people. Building the wall in this period was a death sentence for enormous numbers of them, built on the bones of Milalu and Esther. Qin Wall was built in some of the most inhospitable terrain in China. Workers labored in extreme cold in winter and extreme heat in summer. They carried stones and earth up mountain slopes with no modern equipment, just human backs, wooden poles, and rope. Food supply to remote construction sites was unreliable. Disease spread through large work camps. Accidents were constant. Those who died were sometimes buried within the wall itself, a fact that gave rise to the legend that the Great Wall is the longest graveyard in the world. Modern archaeology has not confirmed mass burials inside the wall, but the human cost was undeniably catastrophic. Ancient Chinese records and folklore are full of stories about the suffering of wall builders. The most famous is the legend of Lady Meng Jiang, whose husband was conscripted to build the wall and died there. She traveled to the wall to find him, discovered he was dead, and wept so bitterly that a section of the wall collapsed to reveal his bones. It is a legend, but legends carry truth. And the truth here is that the wall was built on grief. The Qin Wall was made primarily of rammed earth, layers of soil packed so tightly it became almost as hard as stone. It was effective, it was fast, and in many places it no longer exists. 2,000 years of weather have reduced it to barely visible ridges in the landscape. The Han Dynasty Expansion. After Qin Shi Huang's death, his empire collapsed quickly. But the Han Dynasty that replaced it, one of the greatest in Chinese history, understood the same northern threat. The Han expanded the wall dramatically westward, pushing it deep into Central Asia, protecting the trade routes that were just beginning to develop into what we now call the Silk Road. Han-era walls extended the defensive system to over 10,000 miles at its peak. The Han also tried a different strategy alongside the wall. Diplomacy and marriage alliances with the Xiongnu. Chinese princesses were sent north to marry Xiongnu leaders. Silk and grain were sent as gifts or tribute, depending on your perspective. It was not entirely effective. The raids continued. The wall was still needed. The wall that failed Genghis Khan in 1211 AD. The Great Wall faced its greatest test, and failed Genghis Khan led the Mongol armies south toward China. The Qin dynasty, which controlled northern China at the time, had the wall, had garrisons, had watchtowers, had everything the wall was supposed to provide. It did not matter. Genghis Khan did not smash through the wall in a direct sea. He went around it. He found passes. He bribed or overwhelmed individual garrisons. He used speed and mobility, the fundamental advantages of steppe cavalry, to make the wall irrelevant. By 1215, the Mongols had sacked the Qin capital. By 1279, Kublai Khan, Genghis's grandson, controlled all of China. The wall had not saved it, but China drew a lesson from the Mongol conquest. Not that walls were useless, but that this wall was not good enough, not extensive enough, not strong enough, not well garrisoned enough. When the Mongols were eventually driven out and the Ming dynasty established in 1368, the greatest wall-building project in history began. The Ming dynasty, the wall we see Pierre the Ming dynasty, was defined by one overriding fear: that the Mongols would return. For nearly 300 years, Ming emperors poured resources into the wall on a scale that dwarfed everything that had come before. The rammed earth of previous dynasties was replaced with fired brick and granite. Watchtowers were rebuilt to standard specifications. Garrison towns were established at regular intervals. Signal beacon systems were created so that an alarm raised at one end of the wall could reach Beijing within hours. The Ming Wall stretched approximately 8,800 kilometers, about 5,500 miles. It is this wall, its watchtowers, its battlements, its dramatic mountain crossings that tourists visit today, that appears in every photograph. That represents the Great Wall in the global imagination. It was built over 2 centuries by an estimated 1 million workers per year during peak construction periods. The logistics alone was staggering, supplying food, water, tools, and materials to construction sites along 8,000 kilometers of remote mountainous terrain. The bricks of the Ming Wall were stamped with information, the kiln that made them, the supervisor responsible for their quality. If a brick failed inspection, the responsible party could be traced and punished. Quality control on a medieval construction project. Across thousands of kilometers, the engineering and organizational achievement of the Ming Wall remains one of the most impressive in human history. Could you see it from space? Almost everyone has heard this claim. The Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. It is not true. The wall is extraordinarily long, but it is only about 5 to 8 meters wide. From the altitude of the International Space Station, objects that narrow simply cannot be resolved by the naked human eye. Multiple astronauts have confirmed this. Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei, the first Chinese person in space, specifically reported that he looked for the wall and could not see it. The myth probably began in the 1930s, long before space travel. It was possible as a way of expressing how vast the wall was. It captured the imagination and became accepted as fact. The Great Wall is genuinely one of the most extraordinary structures in human history. It does not need myths to make it impressive. The truth is impressive enough. Did it actually work? The honest answer is sometimes, partially, in complicated ways. The wall was never intended to be an impenetrable barrier. That was never really possible across such vast terrain with the technology available. What it was designed to do was slow raiders down, give defenders time to respond, and make large-scale invasions expensive and difficult. In that limited sense, it worked. Small raiding parties were deterred. Larger forces had to commit to attacking fortified positions rather than simply riding through open steppe. But determined, organized military forces, like the Mongols under Genghis Khan, or the Manchus who ended the Ming Dynasty in 1644, found ways through, around, or past the wall. The Ming dynasty fell not because the Manchus broke through the wall, but because a desperate Ming general opened the gates himself, hoping the Manchus would help him suppress a rebellion. The wall's greatest enemy was never the armies outside. It was the political and military weakness within. 2,000 years of building, millions of lives spent in its construction, emperors who dedicated their dynasties to it, generals who bled for it, workers who died inside it. The Great Wall of China is not just a wall. It is a record of human ambition, human fear, and human determination written in stone across the face of an entire landscape. It tells the story of a civilization that refused to feel vulnerable, that responded to the terror of the open steppe by doing the most extraordinary, most impracticable, most magnificent thing imaginable. It built a mountain range, and it still stands.